LiberalViewer presents.
So welcome to what would usually be my LiberalViewer Sunday live clip roundup. Thanks for joining me. I've got almost a dozen clips on a few different topics for what is a somewhat different but still interesting show tonight. Because I'll be traveling during the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the corporate media here in the United States that I usually discuss live on my Sunday show at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, this week I'll just be showing clips of the political comedy that was on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher last Friday night and adding my recorded commentary between the clips. On the upside, the political comedy is usually more entertaining than the drier, more serious news clips I usually take from the big five corporate news outlets, but on the downside, Bill Maher's news coverage is sometimes more shallow than even the corporate news outlets, and he covers fewer breaking topics, especially when it comes to foreign policy, so I'll only have a brief reference to the growing conflict between Israel and the Palestinians during one of the several clips I'll show on the immigration crisis, because that was the only reference to Israel in Bill Maher's whole show, though there was a little more discussion of Israel in the online overtime segment you can see at the web address I show above the video of the clips I'll be playing. So sorry I'll have no real coverage of the important developing story in and around Israel and the Middle East this week, but in addition to the clips on the immigration crisis at the border I mentioned, I'll have a couple on NSA spying, a couple quick ones at the end on the Republican lawsuit against President Obama over Obamacare, and Sarah Palin's call for Obama's impeachment. But first I want to show a few clips on the Hobby Lobby contraceptive coverage decision in the Supreme Court, which Bill Maher couldn't cover last week while he was off, so he covered it this week, including with the jokes in his monologue that you can see here.
But the 5 Catholic men on the Supreme Court agreed with Hobby Lobby that loose women who have pleasure sex should be saddled with a baby, because if there is anyone who is an expert on screwing people and then leaving them with messes to deal with, it is the Supreme Court. And
So that line at the end about the Supreme Court leaving messes for others to clean up is kind of funny, but I thought the opening part about the 5 Catholic men was actually more interesting, especially because I'm not sure that religious identification would go over as well on the corporate news programs, especially on Fox News, though I heard a liberal legal scholar, Lawrence Tribe, on a radio show this week objecting to a categorization of Supreme Court justices by religion as too divisive, and I may try to make a video on that topic before the end of this week, but I did want to show a clip of the full panel discussing the Hobby Lobby decision last Friday night, again with Bill Maher focusing on the 5 Catholic men on the Supreme Court who made up the Hobby Lobby majority at the beginning of this clip.
the 5 Catholic men on the Supreme Court, they decided that, I think Catholic doctrine trumps federal law. Am I seeing it wrong?
That's not what they decided, Bill. So, first of all, the contraception mandate was from the Department of Health and Human Services. It was a regulation. And what they were deciding is about a statute, the Religious Freedom and Restoration Act, and if it applied in this particular case. And what they found is very simple with the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. If there's a more burdensome and a less burdensome way to achieve the basic goal of guaranteeing that women have access to no copay contraception, if there's a less burdensome way to do it, let's do that in the case of religious employers. And I think that when you put it that way, it's not about denying people access to contraception or anything else. That's really what it is, you guys.
Well, I want to put it another way.
That's actually what the case says.
It's about your bosses meddling in your reproductive health care, and women are tired of that. It's about your employer who, something like 50% of workers work for employers who are like Hobby Lobby employers. This is a wide-ranging decision that's going to have a huge impact on women.
And already they're getting letters about gay rights. They're saying, why not?
Correct.
If we're doing this, let's do gay rights. We will make a choice. And the fact is, employers have so much power in this country at this point. So much is webbed into the employer-employee relationship because government has stepped back. This allows for latitude and a kind of mischief for employers all over the country. And where do they go next? That's the question.
So I obviously agree more with the Democratic Congressperson Donna Edwards and even journalist and author Reihan Salam than with the conservative on the panel, Reihan Salam from National Review. But Reihan Salam did make one good point later that people often miss about the Hobby Lobby decision, it's not a decision about the First Amendment freedom of religion, which is much more limited as an exemption to the law. It's about a statute passed by Congress that gives special rights to religious people called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that Congress could change, as Reihan Salam pointed out, and the member of Congress on the panel, Donna Edwards, confirmed here.
That's an open question. This was about a statute. Congress can pass a different law stripping these religious freedoms from certain employers.
Well,
Congress
I'm glad you mentioned that because
Donna's going to do it.
We can do that. We should do it today because for women across this country to have their reproductive rights taken away from them, to have their ability to go and purchase contraceptives and have those reimbursed by insurance companies just because these 5 guys, as you describe them on the Supreme Court, decided to do that. Women are not going to stand for it, and we're going to see that play out in this election.
It should be a debate.
And that last point about how this issue may play out in the election is something I hope will be true in the 2014 congressional elections, and it's probably already part of the Democrats' strategy to turn out the base this year, but it could be an even bigger issue in 2016, especially with the potential of the first woman president running that year. So I thought those Hobby Lobby clips were worth showing, but I want to move on to the topic that I spent the most time on last Sunday and Bill Maher spent the most time on last Friday, the immigration crisis with all those unaccompanied minors showing up at the U.S. border from Central America. And even though, as I showed with news clips last Sunday, the crisis is really the result of a 2008 law passed by Congress and signed by George W. Bush that gives special rights to unaccompanied minors from non-contiguous countries, Republicans have been trying to find ways to blame it on President Obama, of course, with the latest bogus reason to attack President Obama on this issue being his failure to visit the border on his recent trip to Texas, which Bill Maher satirized in his monologue like this.
So naturally, the Republicans are looking for a distraction for this issue. They want to make it all about how it, of course, is Obama's fault. So they're obsessed with the idea that Obama did not go down to the border himself and see. And Obama said, look, if I want to meet thousands of illegal immigrants, I could just go to a Dodger game. I don't have to... He said, why do I need to see a 5-year-old who can barely speak English? I'm with Rick Perry right now.
So those jokes about the immigration crisis were definitely amusing, but Bill Maher had an actual newsmaker on the show as well, Democratic member of Congress Donna Edwards, who was there to point out the Republican role in keeping our immigration system broken, as you can see in this clip.
Well, look, let's get to what the real crisis is. The crisis here with this border is because we have an immigration system that is completely broken, that is exacerbated, the problem with the children on the border now, exacerbated by the fact that we have a patchwork quilt of immigration law. And we have 200 Democrats, 3 Republicans who say that they would pass comprehensive immigration reform in the House, and we need 18 more. Where are the 18 Republicans who are going to do something that actually would make a difference?
Well,
And I think that's right, and if you've been a longtime viewer of my Liberal Viewer Sunday live clip roundup show, you've seen me cover the ups and downs of comprehensive immigration reform, starting with that bipartisan bill that passed the United States Senate with really too much border enforcement and a long, circuitous path to citizenship, and then the Senate bill stalled in the Republican House of Representatives, for which Republicans have responsibility and for which they may pay a political price. But I also thought Bill Maher brought up an important point about the bigger picture of refugees around the world and the way the United States doesn't seem willing to do its part comparatively. And this is also the only mention of the situation in Israel during the main show that I could find, as I'll discuss a little more after you watch that clip over here.
My bigger point was that there are countries in the world who deal with so much bigger refugee problems than this one. I mean, the other South American countries are getting influxes of people also. How come the richest country in the world is the one that screams the loudest? The one that has probably more space for these people and more ability to handle them? Ask people in Lebanon. I mean, there's a war going on, you know, to their left and to their right. Israel is now at war again with the Palestinians. These people must be saying, I've got 2 million Syrians in my front yard. And you're worrying about 50,000 kids from Guatemala, 85% of whom have relatives here in America. It doesn't...
in those countries, they...
And I think that's right. Americans should be more willing to accept regional refugees, especially given some of the much more dire refugee problems from around the world. And before I leave the immigration issue, I couldn't resist one more clip showing the way Bill Maher started his panel discussion on immigration, and you'll never guess who Bill Maher found to be the real culprit in the immigration problem that you can see in this clip.
Comes out. But let's start with the border one. And let's just cut to the chase on this border kid issue. Let me use a couple of pictures. Look at show the picture of the kid sleeping on the floor. These kids are sleeping on this floor because this guy is shoving blow up his nose. And the answer there is to not get this guy to stop doing blow. That would be the easy answer, but that will never happen, nor should it. This is a free country. That's a dumb drug, but you should be able to do dumb things. You're allowed to have as many guns as you want. The answer is decriminalizing drugs. Decriminalizing drugs gets those kids off the floor.
Now, I think that analysis is a little simplistic, though certainly not entirely inaccurate, because the violence of narco-traffickers and drug gangs have a lot to do with the problems in Honduras and other Central American countries that these kids are fleeing from, and also many problems in Mexico. But there are many other factors as well, I think. But you can let me know what you think in the comment section, because I'm going to move on to the next topic for the show. A couple clips on NSA spying, and there were actually a couple big NSA spying stories this week, and unfortunately Bill Maher didn't cover the one that Glenn Greenwald broke on his Intercept website about the NSA and the FBI spying on innocent Muslim American lawyers, civil rights leaders, and others. But Bill Maher did cover the other breaking story from the Washington Post study of the Edward Snowden leaks that shows that the so-called Section 702 NSA spying program that doesn't just collect metadata, but also actually collects content, and it's supposed to only target foreign intelligence sources. Well, that program actually targeted innocent Americans in 9 out of 10 cases, as Bill Maher pointed out with a response from Democratic member of Congress Donna Edwards over in this clip.
Mid-show break. There was a study done this week found out that online conversations that were intercepted and stored by the NSA, 9 out of 10 were not from foreigners. They're from ordinary citizens. And I want to read this. Many files, it says, described as useless by the analysts, but had a startlingly intimate, even voyeuristic quality. Stories of love and heartbreak, illicit sexual liaisons, mental health crises, and disappointed hopes. Move over, Taxi Cab Confessions. We have a new show. This is exactly what they said they weren't going to do. Just be, nosy and look into the lives of private people for their own shits and giggles. And I just want to say, if this was happening under Bush, liberals would be apoplectic. I'm sorry, but liberals are just sometimes useless Obama hacks without a shred of intellectual honesty.
I'm an apoplectic liberal on this one.
You are great.
I really am. I mean, I think that the NSA has greatly overreached. I think that the Congress has not set any boundaries that are understandable by the American people. And listening to millions of calls intercepted that have nothing to do with national security. We need to have somebody in those FISA courts, in those oversight courts,
right,
who's our advocate, arguing against the government for their surveillance. And I don't agree with the administration's policy on the NSA, and this has got to stop.
Now, I'm glad Donna Edwards was there to defend liberals somewhat, though I think having an advocate for privacy in the FISA court is only a small step in the right direction. And I would agree more with Bill Maher if he said some on the left are just pro-Obama hacks for not fighting against NSA spying when Obama does it. I don't think those who defend Obama's NSA spying are truly liberals, because liberals by definition are especially supportive of civil liberties, and you'll have to convince me I've committed one of those no true Scotsman fallacies, because I really don't think I did. But on the other hand, I don't think I completely agreed with journalist Ron Suskind's analysis either, as I'll discuss after I show it over in this clip.
This has risen dramatically from 2009 to now. That's when so much of the growth has occurred under Obama. Whatever he said during the campaign, that's the fact of it. Look, all through the Bush period. I did some of this reporting. We had a prove the negative problem. We sensed this was going on. We had some reportage, but they were saying, okay, prove it. We couldn't get the goods. The one thing Snowden has done is provide the goods to make the case that it is real. Now the question is, what does America do about it now that they know?
No, the one part of that analysis from Ron Suskind I don't agree with is that he seems to blame the growth of NSA spying since 2009 all on President Obama, when I pointed out in my video Impeach Obama for NSA Spying that a lot of that growth comes from congressional authorization of NSA spying, not just executive action, especially the FISA Amendments Act, which doesn't let President Obama off the hook because he voted for that legislation when he was a senator running for president in 2008, so his support for those powers after being elected shouldn't be that surprising, even though I disagree with them. And of course, something else with which I disagree is the Republican lawsuit against President Obama that I discussed on LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup a couple weeks back. And Republican Speaker of the House John Boehner announced this week the actual grounds for the lawsuit would be the delay in the implementation of Obamacare, which Bill Maher briefly made fun of before moving to the desires of the more radical wing of the Republican Party, you can see in this clip.
John Boehner yesterday revealed why he is suing Obama, because Obama delayed implementing parts of the Affordable Care Act, which he tried to repeal 50 times. So, not to be outdone, Sarah Palin announced this week on her website that she is calling for Obama's impeachment. The border stuff that we were just talking about was the last straw for her. She said, oceans cannot protect us from Mexico any longer. And she is so serious about this, she says, in fact, any Republican who doesn't support impeachment will not get her support. So that must have the potty-trained Republicans very upset. We have a copy of the articles of impeachment, which she herself has put out. Would you like to hear it? Because I think it's pretty interesting. Okay. To which it may concern. Hear ye, hear ye. Thus we resolve to the impeachment of Barack Hussein Obama also. Article 1, for allowing children to illegally cross our borders from countries like Honduras, Guatemala, and El Segundo. Article 2, for covering up the attack on our embassy in Benghazi. There's Benghazi, that's Benghazi. For covering up the... Article 3 is seen as one who thinks we're stupid, used the missing airliner to distract us from, hey, remember that missing airliner? Article 4, like I have to tell you. Article 5, some shit I heard on the radio. Article 6, for killing Nicole Brown Simpson. Oh, she is not that... Oh, shut the fuck up.
I always enjoy a good Sarah Palin joke, and I especially like Article 5 and 6 there, though there were a couple more articles I didn't show, but the serious point, I think, is that the Republican Party is always in danger of having its right wing make it look ridiculous, which is always a reason to have hope in the November elections that often don't look that promising for Democrats. But one piece of good news for Democrats is the way Obamacare is increasing in popularity, which creates a reality problem for Republicans that Bill Maher covered in his new rules section in a new rule that began with this introduction.
Well, now that there's been an uproar over all the neocons who lied about the Iraq War with no consequences, someone must tell me why there isn't a similar uproar over all the Republicans who lied about Obamacare with no consequences. It's been 4 years. It's been 4 years since the bill passed. Has anybody come across even one death panel? The next liberal to tell a Republican, you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts, should really just admit they've never seen Fox News.
Of course, I always love a good Fox News joke, and Bill Maher may be right that Republicans will be held accountable for those scare tactics about Obamacare that never materialized, though I'm somewhat skeptical public opinion on Obamacare is really moving that far among the likely voters for this November's elections, but you let me know what you think in the comment section, and let me know what you think of this different format for the show, since I was traveling during the time I usually produce and broadcast my regular Sunday live clip roundup show. But I will be back next week at the regular time of 6:30 p.m. Pacific to broadcast the regular clips from the Sunday morning corporate news analysis shows, along with a little of the political comedy quasi-news clips from Bill Maher. And I'll also try to make another produced edited video, maybe on categorizing Supreme Court justices by religion later this week, so keep an eye out for that. And I hope you enjoyed the clips I picked out, my commentary, and I guess I'll be seeing you all around the internet.